Hello and welcome to this live telephone town hall meeting with the 33rd Congressional District of Texas. We appreciate you joining us tonight. We are dialing out to tens and thousands of your neighbors around the 33rd Congressional District of Texas tonight, over 40,000 households tonight for this live forum. We appreciate you joining us. While we finish our dial out, I'll go over how you can participate in this live virtual forum with your congressman tonight. Again, welcome to this live telephone town hall meeting with the 33rd Congressional District of Texas. Tonight we'll be joined by your Congressman, Mark Veasey, who is here to provide updates on what's happening in Washington, D.C. We will hear from him shortly, and he'll be providing us with updates on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Build Back Better Act. So stay tuned for that, and once we hear those important updates, we'll jump right into Q&A with you folks in the audience. So if you have a question at any time during this forum, you can press 0 to give that question to one of our operators. They'll take down some notes on your question and put you in line to ask it live. If you're not comfortable asking your question live, that's not a problem. You should still press 0, still submit that question to an operator, and then you can let them know if you want the moderator to read your question over the air instead of bringing you live. Whatever's more comfortable for you, again, either way, you press 0 at any time to submit a question for Q&A, and then you can either go live or let your operator know that you want me to read it. One more thing, if you want to get email updates from Congressman Veasey's office, you can press 7 on your phone to give your email address to one of our operators, and they'll get you added to that email update list for the 33rd Congressional District of Texas. So again, if you'd like to be kept better updated in the future, you can press 7 to give us your email address for updates. All right, folks, we're almost finished dialing out. I'm going to go through this introduction one more time, then I'll turn it over to Congressman Veasey to get us started. Again, welcome to this live telephone town hall meeting with the 33rd Congressional District of Texas. Tonight we're joined by your Congressman, Mark Veasey. He's here to provide updates on what's happening in Washington, D.C. We'll hear from him shortly, and he'll be providing updates on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Build Back Better Act. Once we hear those important updates, we will be going to questions from you folks in the live audience. So listen in, and as soon as you have a question to submit for Q&A, press 0 on your phone to give your question to an operator. You'll then have the opportunity to ask your question live in our forum tonight, but if that's not comfortable for you, just let your operator know that you want me to read your question when you press 0 to submit it. Whatever's more comfortable for you is fine with us. You can also press 7 tonight to register for email updates from Congressman Veasey. We'll get your email address and make sure to keep you updated on the issues that affect you in the 33rd Congressional District in the future. So again, 7 to get email updates, 0 to submit a question for Q&A. We'll try to focus on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Build Back Better Act tonight, but we'll take lots of questions on a variety of topics. So again, 0 to submit a question for Q&A. Let's go ahead and get started, folks. Again, thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to kick off this live virtual forum by turning it over to your Congressman, Mark Veasey. Please go ahead, Representative.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, and I want to thank everybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and residents of the 33rd Congressional District for being a part of tonight's telephone town hall experience. It's crazy that it's been almost a year, and we are entering into the holiday season. And as you know, my colleagues and I in the U.S. House of Representatives, along with President Biden, have been working around the clock to get us back on the right track as we continue to navigate through COVID by passing historic packages that will help North Texans by lowering costs for families and creating good paying jobs along the way, and also fighting inflation. In March 2021, the Democratic-led Congress and the Biden-Harris administration took a definitive step to combat the pandemic by getting the American Rescue Plan signed into law. The sweeping COVID-19 relief put shots in the arms, workers back on jobs, money in pockets, and kids back in school, including my kid. And as of earlier in November, we also got a bipartisan infrastructure bill signed into law. This package is the largest long-term investment in the nation's infrastructure in nearly a century. It repairs roads and bridges, invests in public trail and public transit and rail, expands broadband, and secures clean water for our kids. And as you know, all of us in the Dallas-Fort Worth area have seen just incredible growth and so many people moving here And we need infrastructure here probably more than anywhere else in the country. The bipartisan legislation invested more than $35 billion to infrastructure projects across Texas, and also includes key priorities that I have advocated for. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I introduced legislation that created the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, which helped economically vulnerable Americans to afford their monthly internet bill. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act invests billions more in this program, turning it from an emergency broadband benefit program to a long-term broadband benefit program for struggling households that continues in the Affordable Connectivity Program. Additionally, the infrastructure bill is going to include infrastructure jobs from the bipartisan support that I was able to get into the bill under the SCALE Act that supports the infrastructure bill, not necessary to enable us to have a net zero emissions economy, and that's a clean air, 100% clean air emissions economy. And it includes provisions from legislation that will host funding for local energy efficiency projects and provides grants to build or retool facilities for the promising of battery materials and manufacturing of battery components. And we're not just stopping at the bipartisan infrastructure package. In the last few weeks, my colleagues and I in the House, we passed the Build Back Better Act. You've probably seen this as BBB. It's a once-in-a-lifetime generation action to lower everyday costs that make it hard on working families in Texas and across the country. This legislation is going to help with lowering health care costs. It's going to help with child care and family care costs. It's going to help combat climate change so we can make sure that we have clean air and clean water. And it's going to help fight inflation. This package also provides additional funding to the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. Will provide additional ACA subsidies to cover those affected by the Medicaid coverage gap, and will fortify Texas power grid, and will invest in local clean energy initiatives, all priorities that I've spearheaded during my time in Congress. I also want to stress that the Build Back Better Act is fully paid for. In fact, it reduces the federal deficit by more than $100 billion over the next 10 years. I want to repeat that. It reduces. It does not add. It reduces to the federal deficit by more than $100 billion over 10 years by asking rich Americans and rich corporations to pay their fair share of federal taxes. Again, no one making under $400,000 will pay a penny more in taxes. And I want to stress that these packages together will be transformational for our economy and families because, coupled together, the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better Act will create an average of 2 million jobs each year over the course of the decade. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the House and Senate to make sure that we get this legislation over the finish line, and that everything that needs to happen with this bill, that we get it done and that we deliver it to the American people because it's needed. And before I open it up to questions, I just want to stress the most important part of tonight. Get vaccinated. Please get vaccinated, Dallas-Fort Worth. Right now, the spread of the Omicron variant is becoming a potential concern. The way we beat this is by getting vaccinated, if you have not done so yet, and making sure your kids are vaccinated. And if you haven't had a booster, get your booster. My wife just got her booster the other day. If you have not gotten your booster, be sure to get your booster, especially as we get ready to go back indoors. Don't be one of those people that are coming up with all kinds of reasons on why you're not going to get this vaccination. Go get the vaccination. Keep yourself safe. Keep the country safe. Keep the economy safe, and do it for America. Do it so we can get back on our feet and come out of this stronger than any other country in the world. And so with that, I'll hand it back over to our moderator so we can start answering your questions. But really appreciate everything that and you being on today. Thank you.
Appreciate you again. Thank you again, Congressman, for updating us on all of your work in Congress. And we'll go ahead and jump into Q&A now. Thanks to those of you who have already submitted questions. If you're joining us a little late here and you have a question for Q&A, you can submit that at any time by pressing 0 on your phone. Give your question to an operator. They'll put you in line to ask your question live. If you're not comfortable asking it live, let your operator know, and we'll gladly read your question over the air if that's more comfortable for you. Again, 0 for questions. You can also press 7 to get email updates from the Congressman's office. We're going to go to our first live question coming from Tom in Arlington. Tom, thank you for waiting, and you're live on the line. Go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Congressman Veasey for hosting this. The fact that I'm actually having a chance to communicate with a member of Commerce is rare in Texas because I cannot communicate with our 2 senators. They refuse to communicate. So that as an aside. My question is this. Again, I really appreciate the fact that, Congressman, you're there, you're walking the halls, you're doing deliberative work, and that's great. I always have supported the Democratic agenda and like this one a lot. However, media outlets that I hear and can't avoid portray Congress as a clown car en route to Crazy Town. All we read about is Cruz and Hawley and Green and Gohmert and all the craziness that they've put in their various outlet pieces to gain viewership and readership for money. My question to you, sir, is, since you're there, do you see it, is it still a functioning deliberative body, or is it more like what the media is trying to portray it as?
It's still a functioning body. I think that what's happened that I think people really need to push back on is the primaries. As you know, Democrats and Republicans get together every March in Texas, and in some other states they do it in March, in some other states they do it earlier, and some states do it later. They get together every year and they have primaries. And almost everybody that's here now is elected in a primary because they're in a heavily Democratic district or a heavily Republican district. And so what ends up happening is that, like, for instance, I'm going to use the issue of gun safety. 90% of Americans think that we should expand background checks in this country. 90% of Americans think that we should expand common sense gun safety legislation and common sense gun safety laws, not taking anyone's guns away or trying to restrict anyone's right to own a firearm, just making it to where, like the guy that went to Midland and committed that terrible, tragic act of violence there where he was randomly shooting people, where he bought the gun during a private sale. We can't pass that because so many people have become beholden to groups and causes instead of what a majority of the American constituency wants. And so that's the real problem in D.C., and that's what the media wants to focus on, and that's who the media wants to put on a pedestal. And so that's a big problem for getting things done. If people feel like, well, even though a majority of Americans are for this, a majority of people in my primary are not. So therefore, I'm going to let the group win. And you see that over and over again on issues like gun safety, and we have to do better. You know, it has to be about the people. You know, groups and organizations certainly do play a role in advocacy. I meet with groups and organizations all the time. People have a right. People are busy at work, and so whether you are with a group or organization that's advocating on behalf of Social Security, or your local, union, or whatever the cause may happen to be. You have the right to empower someone to come and advocate for you in D.C. because not all 300 plus million Americans have time to fly up to D.C. To see their member of Congress, and I totally get that. All Americans don't have time to see their members of Congress back in their district. I totally get that and totally understand that. So there is a place for groups and organizations, but also members of Congress need to do what's right for the country. And so a lot of the dysfunction that you see are people that are afraid. And that's not good for the country, letting that sort of fear lead you in governance.
Appreciate your answer. Thank you very much, Congressman, and thank you to Tom in Arlington. Appreciate you being our first question of the night. Thank you very much for your participation. Let's jump to Linda in Grand Prairie next. Linda, you're live. Go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, Congressman Veasey. Thank you for all of your work that you've done. It's really great. My question is, which you have sort of hit on, I was just wondering about, is there any new procedures or processes that may be put in place for the new virus that just recently came out? I did look at the news today when President Biden was speaking briefly about it and telling people to get vaccinated, basically what you just said. But that was my question, so I'm done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate you asking about this new variant. And let me just say this, is that, first of all, we shouldn't panic. We should continue to do what we've been doing. Use common sense, socially distance, make sure that we wear a mask when we're indoors. We should continue to use common sense. Get vaccinated if you haven't been, both shots, and make sure that you get your booster. The vaccines are doing what vaccines do. If you go all the way back to 1918 and you look at the flu pandemic back then, it took a couple of years and longer for it to finally play out. And so I would say that absolutely people should continue to live their lives, go to work, take their kids to school. Just make sure that you are watching the news closely, following what the CDC says, that you continue to socially distance and wear your mask, because we'll be able to get through this. We just have to use common sense, and the more and more people that get vaccinated, the faster and faster we'll be over this. It's really that simple.
Thank you again, Congressman. Very much appreciate that answer. And thanks for that last question we got from Linda. Very much appreciate you being a part of our call today, Linda. A reminder, folks, if you'd like to get email updates from the Congressman's office, you can press 7 on your phone. We'll go to our next live question coming from Carrie in Fort Worth. Hey, Carrie, thank you for joining us. What can we do for you?
Yes, I was wondering, just like you said, everybody needs to come together and wear their masks and get their shots, their 2 shots and their booster shot, and stay their distance, keep their distance, wash their hands, and everybody needs to do this nationwide.
Yes,
especially
absolutely.
Kids in school, they all need to keep masks. They don't need to. It's all kids need to have masks on in school until this is over. Until it's over, they need to have them on and keep their distance and wash their hands.
No, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely.
Nobody period, but them kids is them our angels. They don't need to suffer, behind being foolish when you can be safe and wearing a mask and keeping your distance.
Right, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. And look, what I will tell everybody is that, there's been a lot out there on social media and alternative media about, all sorts of things like horse medicine and, and people claiming that the vaccine doesn't work and different things like that, encouraging people to not be. One of the words that I've seen over and over is sheeple. And all of that is silly. All of that is absolutely silly. Go and take this vaccine and this booster. Look, if you go back to 1918 and you look at the pandemic that we had back then, the cities that took it seriously were the cities that rebounded the fastest, that economically that were able to get past this the fastest. People that didn't take it seriously, those were the cities that suffered long term, growth wise, and the pandemic lasted a lot longer in those cities. So we need to do it just because of that. And we need our kids to be in school. We need for our kids. I see my own son, who's in the 10th grade, how much better he's doing back at school versus when it was virtual. I'm not saying that all kids, but there's going to be a handful of kids that are going to be fine virtually. But at the end of the day, school is more than about the education. It's about the social experiment. It's about the extracurricular activities. It's about these other things that make that experiment from the grades of K through 12 very special to these kids' lives. And we need to make sure that they are healthy and that they can continue to be in school so they can learn, so they can be in labs, and so they can do those things that require interaction and activity that they otherwise would not get at home. So, do it for the kids. Stop saying, silly things like sheeple and horse medicine and what have you, and get vaccinated, get your booster, and let's get this economy going and keep America safe.
Very much appreciate the answer again, Congressman, and thank you so much for our last question. A lot of great questions tonight, and we appreciate everybody who's participating. We're going to take a quick break here to start running some polling questions. We've got a few polls, and we very much appreciate your feedback. You can vote on these on your phone, so I'll go ahead and read through each of these polls twice and each of your options twice. So go ahead and listen in the first time and then vote whenever you're ready. Now, the bipartisan infrastructure bill was recently signed into law and will provide over $1 trillion to update the nation's infrastructure. What do you think is the most important investment that the package makes? Press 1 if you think it's repairing roads and bridges. Press 2 if you think it's investing in public transit and rail. Press 3 if you think it's expanding broadband. Press 4 if you think it's securing clean water for our children. And press 5 if you think it's preparing infrastructure for the impacts of climate change. So once again, the bipartisan infrastructure bill was recently signed into law. It'll provide over $1 trillion to update the nation's infrastructure. What do you think is the most important investment that this package makes? Press 1 for repairing roads and bridges. Press 2 for investing in public transit and rail. Press 3 for expanding broadband. Press 4 for securing clean water for our children. And press 5 if you think the most important aspect is preparing infrastructure for impacts of climate change. Go ahead and finish voting now, and while you vote, we'll get our next question up. This one comes to us from Carol in Fort Worth. She's asked me to read it. Carol's question is this, Congressman. Will the Congressman address why I keep getting mail about Congress eventually cutting back on Social Security? Can you take on this question and concern from Carol in Fort Worth?
Yeah, absolutely. Carol, I'm not sure exactly what type of mail that you're getting, but we're not cutting back on Social Security. We're trying to look for ways to increase Social Security. I know that there are several members of Congress, including Democratic Congressman John Larson, that has a plan to actually increase Social Security more than the current COLA. And so, that's, what we're trying to do is to look for ways that we can increase. There may be some people that are for decreasing, but I don't think that it has overwhelming support in Congress whatsoever. We need to look for ways that we can raise Social Security cost of living adjustments.
Yeah, appreciate that answer. Thank you so much, and appreciate you raising that concern. Thanks for our last question from Carol. We'll get to another polling question in a moment here. Let's get Wanda up live from Fort Worth for our next question. Hey, Wanda, thanks for joining us. What's your question for the Congressman?
Yes. Good afternoon, Congressman Veasey. I
Good
am
afternoon.
really. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just thankful for the work that you're doing in Congress, and I know it's been difficult, but it will get more difficult. So you just have to gear it up and just stay prayed up. And I'm praying for you and the Biden administration. So first of all, let me say this: I think the Biden administration has done a great job in getting out stimulus packages, child tax credit monies, everything that has helped people that are really struggling in this economy. I don't think you all do a good job in messaging. I think you need to beef up the messaging on how well you've done and what you've done, because the Republicans are at every turn trying to beat that down. So that's one thing. My concern, though, with all the monies that you've given directly to people, that's fine. They're getting that in their bank accounts. But my concern is all the millions of dollars that you've been given starting last year, 2020, with the CARES money, and then now with the money that was given in January, and then with the ARPA money. I still have a real concern with the oversight of that money. And what I mean by that is that money going to states and municipalities, I'm not seeing transparency in reporting. Is there a requirement that the federal government is putting upon these state and local governments to report, to be transparent in the reporting of where this money is being allocated, how it's being expensed? I'm not seeing that in Fort Worth. The $173 million, I'm not seeing the transparency in reporting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that city of Fort Worth used money for was for broadband. I've talked in my open remarks about broadband, and it's something that I've been very involved in to make sure that we can expand broadband. And during the crisis, we knew that there were going to be a lot of kids that were going to be at home. And so with part of the CARES money, the first batch of money that Congress passed out and sent to states, when the city of Fort Worth got their share, some of the money that I fought for, they actually used to expand broadband in 6 different Fort Worth neighborhoods, including 5 in the district that I represent. And so we wanted to make sure that they could do that, and they were able to. And that's something that I'm really proud of. And so, we want to make sure that that they can do that, and there needs to be transparency in it. I'm not sure exactly on every municipal website around the state or around the country, for that matter, whether or not they have put an easy to read bold print on their website. Here's exactly how we allocated our money, but I do know that is something that you can find out about. So if there's anything that you ever have questions about specifically as it relates to this money being spent, let us know, reach out to us. And if we can't answer it, we can certainly send you to the right governmental entity that ultimately receives the money, whether it's the city or the county or the state, and they would be more than happy to tell you and they'd be more than happy to tell you where that money would be going. And if they don't, let me know, because that's a problem.
Very much appreciate the answer again. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for Wanda's question. We're going to go to another polling question here, then we'll get our next question up from folks in the audience. We are at the halfway mark of our forum. We have 30 minutes left. So a reminder here, if you want to submit a question for Q&A, we've got quite a few folks who are still waiting to ask their question. But if you want to submit a question, you can still press 0. And if you want to get email updates from the Congressman's office, press 7 on your phone. Speak to an operator, give them your email address, and we'll keep you updated moving forward. Now, our next polling question for you is this. If you have children, do you think the Biden child tax credit should be extended? Press 1 on your phone for yes, 2 on your phone for no. Again, if you have children, do you think the Biden child tax credit should be extended? Press 1 on your phone for yes, press 2 on your phone for no. Go ahead and vote now. We're going to get our next question coming to us next. from an anonymous caller who's actually asked me to read their question as well. So we'll get this one, an anonymous question from Fort Worth. Question is, she loves the forum. She is worried about another Texas blackout this winter. What assurance is there that it won't happen again? Congressman, any updates you can provide on that topic for us?
Yeah, I wish that I had positive news on that, but the Republican leadership in Austin did nothing to help the situation with the grid, sadly. They wasted the entire legislative session passing bills to make it harder for people to vote, but did nothing to make sure that we don't spend another week in the cold if we have another record low temperatures when it comes to our winter. I'm very concerned about that. I am very upset that I'm very upset that Republicans across the state and our governor did nothing of substance to address that issue. There are a lot of problems when it comes to our grid, and I want everybody to know we were literally less than 2 minutes away from the entire grid crashing, and it would have taken months to get it back up. Can you imagine us not having electricity for months? I don't think that people realize just how serious the failure in Austin was to make sure that our grid was modernized, how close we were to losing it, because all these years the Republicans have had an opportunity to fix the grid, and they refused to do so, including after the crash that we had in February. We've passed packages in D.C. that will help states modernize grids, and hopefully that will help, because the legislature, during their regular session, the state legislature, not the area that I represent you on the federal level, but the state legislature in Austin, they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing to help with this problem. They would rather pass bills to make it harder for people to vote.
Thank you again, Congressman Veasey. Appreciate that answer. Thank you for our anonymous question from Fort Worth. We're going to go back to the phones here for this question from Roy in Irving. Roy, thanks so much for waiting. You're live on the line with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question, please, sir.
Thank you, Congressman. Had a couple questions. The first has to do with the Build Back Broke bill you guys passed. Evidently, you don't understand business, because if you tax businesses, it raises their cost of goods and services up. Well, they don't absorb that. They pass it on to us consumers, which means our rates and costs go up. We're going to pay for that bill one way or the other. Pay me now, pay me later, but we're going to pay. Likewise, what are you going to do? My first question is, what are you going to do to reduce the cost of government on us taxpayers? The second has to do with what the comment you made earlier about guns. Guns are an inanimate object. They don't kill anybody. They don't hurt anybody. It's the people behind them. One of the things you need to do is figure out how to put families and churches back into families. And that can be done several ways, because LBJ is the one that started with the AFDC. How are you going to bring families back together?
Yeah, well, Roy, Roy, I appreciate it, and you, if it's the Roy that I'm thinking about, you always come to all the town hall meetings when they're in person, and you always reach out to me, even though we don't agree, and I appreciate that, because these forums are supposed to be about all people having the right to express their opinions, and we live in a country where we have a First Amendment, and that means both sides being heard. If only one side is being heard, then that's not a true First Amendment. So first of all, let me say that I appreciate you calling in. On your question about Build Back Better, I'm going to say that no, it is not going to add to the deficit, and it's not going to tax individuals like yourself. It's going to tax, Roy, probably a lot of the people that you disagree with in neighborhoods and places like Beverly Hills and what have you, the places, Hollywood, places that you don't agree with. So it's going to tax people that are making over $400,000 a year, people that are much more wealthier. and you should be happy about that, because I know you're not a fan of some of those folks. So it's not going to come out of your pocket. It's going to come out of the very rich people that are making over $400,000 a year. And so the other thing that I'll tell you on guns, again, I'm not making a statement one way or another about guns. I believe in the Second Amendment. I like hunting myself. I mean, I certainly believe that in the rights of responsible gun ownership. I also believe in gun safety. And my point that I was making is that people have become so frightened and so afraid in these primaries, and it's empowered groups to push people to take absurd stances on issues that a majority of Americans support or don't support. And that's the point that I was making. And I think the perfect example of a group that's out of control, and there are lots of groups that are out of control, but the perfect example of a group that's out of control is definitely the National Rifle Association, otherwise known as the NRA. Roy, let me tell you this. Again, despite whatever you think about, gun safety issues in this country, 90% of people think that we should pass a law that will make it harder for that nut to do what he did in Midland, where he went and bought a gun from a private owner, when all you would have to do is you can find anybody in Fort Worth that's a licensed federal firearm dealer to do a transfer for you, so you can do a private sale, and it's going to cost you anywhere from $5 to $20, depending on who the private seller is and how much they charge for their services. Literally $5 to $20. They're all over DFW. But what do we get instead? We have legislation that only 10% of the country is against, that we can't get passed because this group has scared people so much, and it's because everybody is running in one of these primaries. And so that's my point about the dysfunction. It wasn't necessarily a point on guns. I just use that as an example, because I think that the NRA is the epitome that no other group should strive to be by and be like, because it leads to bad outcomes and bad legislation, and it's bad for America, for your group to literally use 3 or 4% of the population, let's say 10% being generous, and let them control major policy decisions like gun safety in this country. It's ridiculous.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that answer, Congressman. And thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate that question from Roy. Thanks so much for being there. And we're going to go to our next polling question before we move on. Appreciate everybody voting in our first couple of polls. Our next one is going to be another 5 options. I'll read through each twice. You can go ahead and vote at any time. Now, Democrats in Congress are working with the Biden-Harris administration to make a once-in-a-generation investment to help our nation's families and workers. We want to know, what is the most important priority for you that this package will invest in? Press 1 if it's expanding small business access to credit, investments, and markets. Press 2 if it's universal preschool and for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Press 3 if it's lowering prescription drug costs. Press 4 if it's closing the Medicaid coverage gap. And press 5 if it's expanding access to affordable home care for older adults and those with disabilities. All right, again, our question for you is, Democrats in Congress are working with the Biden-Harris administration to make this once-in-a-generation investment to help our nation's families and workers. And our question for you is, what is the most important priority for you that this package will invest in? Press 1 if it's expanding small business access to credit, investments, and markets. Press 2 if it's universal preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Press 3 if it's lowering prescription drug costs. Press 4 if it's closing the Medicaid coverage gap. And press 5 if it's expanding access to affordable home care for older adults and those with disabilities. And while we wait for those votes to come in, I'll remind everybody that you can press 7 to get email updates from the congressman. We've got about 20 minutes left in the forum. If we don't answer your question by the end of the forum, you can also leave a voicemail for the congressman's office and get a call back. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can over this next 20 minutes. But, Congressman, we've got the results of our poll in, and I'd like to read the results and ask what your thoughts are, since this is such an important bill to discuss during this forum. So with the highest vote, it's 26% saying expanding access to affordable home care for older adults and those with disabilities. 26% said lowering prescription drug costs was the most important. 23% said it was closing the Medicaid coverage gap. 14% for universal preschool, and 12% for expanding small business access to credit, investments, and markets. Any thoughts on the results of that poll?
Yeah, what was the first result again? I was trying to write them down. What was the first one?
Sure. It was 26% for expanding access to affordable home care for older adults and those with disabilities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I hear from so many senior citizens and families that have senior citizens in them that's concerned about adult care, home health care related issues. And so absolutely, we want to make sure that we expand that. We also want to make sure that we are expanding our small businesses as well. I mean, that's something that's hugely important. And one thing that I'm happy about with Build Back Better is that there is specific language in there that is going to be used to help our young people, our families, when it comes to the question of making sure that we can help adult families that are dealing with issues. I know that family care costs can be very expensive. And so if you look at Build Back Better, it's going to help many, many families reduce their family household costs by looking at issues around housing, making sure that we help people that have adults that have disabilities, helping individuals with post-secondary education. All of those things are in Build Back Better.
Appreciate you highlighting some of those for us. And thank you, everybody, for telling us what you were most interested in that Build Back Better package. Thanks very much for voting in those polls. We'll have one more in a couple minutes here, but let's get back to Q&A. We've got Willie in Dallas next. Willie, thanks for joining us. What's your question?
My name is Annette Spearman, and I'm also concerned about the homeless problem here in Dallas, Texas, and especially with the veterans. I have tried to help so many of them trying to find housing, and it's almost impossible. And then I can understand about the COVID situation, too. And, that's terrible. Then when you have a person homeless and dealing with COVID and all that, I mean, it's really crazy. And, Congressman, I know you're not God. And I know you can only do so much. But the homeless problem here in Dallas is crazy. It's crazy. And if you can, get with your other colleagues to try and help the situation here in Dallas, it would be a blessing. And some of them even have an income. But still, it's hard to get in if you don't have enough money for the deposit and all that. These guys really need help. So, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate your question. And yeah, it's a big problem, and it's amazing to here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. You go out to the West Coast, you go to Austin, you go anywhere, and you see these large homeless populations. And I think a couple of things have to be addressed. The first is that a large portion of the homeless population have some pretty serious mental health issues that they have to deal with, and there's not a lot of help out there for certain individuals to be able to get those issues treated. And so we need to make sure that we have adequate resources so people can get help that need to get help and that want to get help. We need to make sure that our veterans, we have a large number of veterans that are homeless out there. We need to make sure that our veterans know about what's available and how they can be serviced through the VA when it comes to some of those services, because we have a lot of veterans out there that are homeless, and we need to make sure they know about these programs that can be accessed that can help them be able to get on the right track when it comes to having a house. Some of the other issues around homelessness are much more complex, and right now with COVID-19, of course, building materials and prices of everything have gone up, and so building new housing is expensive, and in certain areas, including cities here in Dallas-Fort Worth area, it's made living in urban areas much more expensive. You probably remember back in the 70s and 80s when everyone was moving into suburbs. Well, now you have a lot of young people that want to live in cities and want to raise families in cities, and there's a scarcity of property available in some neighborhoods. And so housing is becoming much more expensive. Rental properties are becoming more scarce, and it ends up driving the price of everything up, and it makes it tough. And the other thing, too, that I think that you need to see, we need to see more help from the federal government as sent down to the states when it comes to supportive housing. There's a organization that I would like to point to in the congressional district that I represent in the Fort Worth part of the district in Fort Worth called Samaritan House. Samaritan House was initially for people that were homeless, that were HIV and AIDS positive. Now that people that are HIV positive are going back into mainstream society because of treatments and drugs, and people are being able to live normal lives now because of treatment options, it's made it a lot easier for people in that particular population to be able to get help. And so they've expanded those services for other people outside of people that are HIV and AIDS positive. And I just want to point them out because if you drive by there, it just looks like any other normal, very clean, well taken care of housing unit that you would see anywhere in the country. It really does. It literally it looks like any other housing place. They have very strict rules. You don't see stuff hanging over the balconies or, people hanging out front, which is important for the homeless population because they're getting those services met indoors at Samaritan House. They're getting those services met indoors, and there are tasks and things like that they're doing that are indoors, and they have people to treat them internally. And we need more options like that for our homeless population. I think it's very important. That's the only way that's going to be solved. They have to have more. They have to have more options.
Thank you again, Congressman. Very much appreciate your answers to all of these questions. And we're going to go to a couple more, folks. We have about 10 minutes left. I am going to run another polling question after our next question from Katarina in our Spanish simulcast audience. So you'll have one more poll to vote in. And I wanted to mention here that, again, with about 10 minutes left here, if you want to find more information on either the Build Back Better Act that recently passed the House but that has not yet passed the Senate, or that infrastructure package that has passed both, you can find that information on the Congressman's website. You can go to veasey.house.gov. That's VEASEY.house.gov to find out more information on both of those. There will be some press releases on both bills, and there will also be fact sheets on both. So we can discuss a lot during this forum here, but if you're looking for some more in-depth information, again, veasey.house.gov. You can sign up on there for email updates from the Congressman's, email update. You can do that at the website as well, or, again, you can press 7 right now. This is our last call for email updates from the Congressman's office. Again, press 7 here if you'd like to get email updates from the Congressman. Last chance to do that on this forum today. We'll go to Katarina next in our Spanish simulcast broadcast. Congressman, she says, I didn't receive the $600 stimulus. Why didn't I receive this payment? Any suggestion you might have for Katarina in Dallas here?
Yeah, I would ask Katarina to please reach out to the Dallas office, 214-741-1387, 214-741-1387. And we can, if you sign a release form, we can look into that for you to find out why you did not receive that payment by check or either by wire transfer to your bank account.
Got it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Katerina. And Katerina, again, that phone number is 214-741-1387. Or, Katerina, you can stay on the line. In just about 10 minutes here, we'll finish this forum, and you can stay on the line and leave a voicemail message for the Congressman's office, and we can have them give you a call back if you stay on and leave a message. All right, let's get to a couple more questions. We've got this one coming to us from Jerome, who looks like he's asked me to read it. So Jerome's asking, I was hearing about the vacancies of federal judges on the news. Is this true? What can the congressman and we as citizens do to eliminate the backlog of federal judgeship vacancies? This one's coming from Jerome in Dallas. Does that ring a bell for you, Congressman?
I'm not sure. I do know about that issue very well, and I appreciate Jerome reaching out and asking the question. There's not a lot that I can do when it comes to judicial vacancies because there are 2 Republican senators right now. We have a Democratic president. They will ask the local Democrats where there are vacancies whom should be appointed to those seats and take recommendations. But at the end of the day, the 2 senators that we have, they can still block those recommendations. And so it's sad for citizens and for individuals because people that need to get their cases heard in federal court is going to take longer because there are a lot of people that the president is going to nominate that, quite frankly, that the 2 senators are probably going to block, and they can put a hold on them, and they can use what is known as a blue slip, and they can put a blue slip on any person in their state and stop them from being able to do that. And so that's just not good. That's not good at all. The president needs to be able to appoint whom they want into these positions. Of course, the senators have a right to scrutinize that. We have co-equal branches of government where no branch is more powerful than the other branches. So they certainly should be able to scrutinize those and prevent those from happening when justified and warranted, but not just because they just don't like the person or like some of their past rulings. That makes it out of control.
Appreciate you again, Congressman. Thank you so much. Thank you to Jerome for reaching out on that topic. And folks, unfortunately, we're just about out of time. I'm going to give the Congressman a few minutes to offer any closing thoughts he has in just a moment here, but we're going to run one more survey question real quick, and we do appreciate all of your feedback on these polls. We'd like to know now what the most important issue that you think Congress and the Biden-Harris administration should prioritize. So we're going to go ahead and read through these options twice. Vote whenever you're ready. Again, what is the most important issue you think Congress and the Biden-Harris administration should focus on? Press 1 if it's fighting COVID-19 and providing assistance to those affected. Press 2 if it's expanding health care access. Press 3 if it's providing a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. Press 4 if it's protecting the right to vote. Press 5 if it's preventing gun violence. Again, what's the most important issue you think Congress should prioritize? Press 1 if it's fighting COVID-19 and providing assistance to those affected. Press 2 if it's expanding health care access. Press 3 if it's providing a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. Press 4 if it's protecting the right to vote. And finally, press 5 if it's preventing gun violence. Thank you so much for voting in all of those polls. We very much appreciate your feedback. And I'll let you know here, if we didn't get a chance to answer your question, I apologize to those we couldn't get to during this hour. Feel free to stay on the line as we wrap up here. By staying on the line, you'll go to the voicemail system. You can leave a message with your name, your phone number, and your question or concern, and we'll have somebody from the Congressman's office follow back up with you and answer those questions in the next few days. So again, you can stay on at the end to leave a message. With that, I'll turn it back over to your Congressman, Mark Veasey, to please take us to the close. Go ahead again, Representative.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone taking the time to join this evening to ask questions about what's happening in the country as it relates to Build Back Better, and want to thank everybody that called into the office that expressed opinions about the infrastructure bill that we were able to get signed and passed into law. So much bipartisan support for that bill, and there's going to be a lot of support from people all across the country in all walks of life that are going to be for Build Back Better when it's passed into law too, because it's going to help so many average Americans out there. And so please keep giving us your feedback on that. I also want to ask everyone to just continue to stay safe and continue to use common sense. Go get vaccinated if you haven't. Go get your booster if you haven't gotten that done yet. Use your mask when you're indoors. When you sit down, you can take it off. But when you're indoors, for the most part, keep it on. There's very, little concern about outdoor infection. So you can still go outdoors and exercise and take walks and do all of those beautiful things without wearing a mask. And so continue to do that. Continue to watch your mental health as the country goes back and forth from people being careful and wearing masks and what have you. We know that it's tough to be separated and have to wear a mask everywhere. So please make sure that you're paying attention to your mental health and urging everybody to just continue to please pray for the country and to reach out to the office if you have any questions about anything that's going on. If you need to let me know about different events that are going on, you can call the Dallas office or the Fort Worth office. Dallas is 214-741-1387, 817-920-9086 for the Fort Worth office. If you need for me to be in an event, if you need casework with the IRS, with Veterans Administration, with the federal prison system, any federal agency that you can think of, if you're having issues, reach out to us, let us know. We have caseworkers in both offices. Caseworkers in both offices can speak Espanol, and we want you to ask for help when needed, because a lot of times we can help you cut through red tape. Sometimes we make a call on your behalf and we're not successful, but oftentimes we can help cut through some red tape, and we want to be able to do that when possible. So with that, again, thank you very much. Be safe, everyone. I've been watching these smash and grabs on the news. Please be careful during this time while you're out shopping with your loved ones. Please use common sense when out and about. As we continue to work through all these things together, God bless America, and thank you very much for joining this evening.